What's up, guys? I assume you probably came to this video after watching my video discussing the money involved in raising chickens, or at least for my first year. So in this video, I just wanted to discuss some of the non-monetary values that I think would make it worth it, even if the strictly monetized side doesn't entice you enough into raising chickens. Reason number one that I found it very beneficial this year, being my first year, was I learned. I learned a lot. Something I could have read 1,000 articles online, books, everything. At the end of the day, I'm personally the type of person that it's not going to stick with me until I do it. And even if it did stick with me, there's no one else out there that has done things the exact same way that I'm going to do it. So until I do it myself, I don't know what my results are going to be. You know, there might be someone online that raised chickens in Montana. Well, that's a whole lot different than raising them in central Wisconsin. And someone might have done it in their yard. Well, their yard's going to have different grasses than my yard or my pasture. So seeing the results that were specific to me, to my environment, were a big perk, because then I know how to manipulate the year after and the year after to get things more so in my favor. I started with the way, kind of what I thought was right and what I witnessed other people do, and then I put my own twist on it. And now knowing how that turned out, I can adjust it years to come to better benefit myself. So that was number one for my first year. That was a huge perk. Now, number two, what I would say a good benefit is just the, I guess, the human interaction, the human development, if you will, of certain people in my life. My niece and nephew, they came around a lot. They enjoyed seeing the chickens. They would catch grasshoppers and crickets and whatnot and feed them to them. And then they were also there for the butchering. So they saw what was involved in everything. And I think it gives them a better idea of how much work goes into the food that goes on their plate. And it teaches them to respect it more. So that's a good benefit. They're not really young, but they're at an age that they are, I hate to say impressionable, but at the end of the day they are. So it could go one way or the other. And the way the world's going right now, I would rather it go my way, where they learn the truth behind it, and that raising animals isn't inhumane. Slaughtering them is not inhumane. It's the natural process of life. We put the work into this, and then that sustains us. It's natural. It's what's been going on for hundreds and thousands of years. It's nothing new. So they're at that age that I want to make sure to get my foot in the door, to get their mindset personally on what I believe is the right track. Now, if you don't believe that, that's fine. I'm not going to argue. But what I personally believe is the right track for them to be set on. The other, person in my life would be my girlfriend. She wasn't raised in an agricultural background. She's not naive. She knows where food comes from. But for her to get the full scope of how you buy them, where you buy them, how you start them, how to take care of the animals, what to watch for, everything, I think it was a big benefit for her. And no matter what happens between her and I, it's something that she'll never lose. She'll always have that experience and that knowledge of what goes into it and where it all comes from. And again, that extra respect for the food that's then put on her plate. It opens your mind up to a whole new aspect of things. Number three, reason three, that you can't really put a price on it. One of those non-monetary reasons that I want to do it is to get the ground producing here, I guess. I purchased this land about 2 years ago. Before me, it was owned by a couple for 60 to 70 years. He died in 2000, and then she had passed in 2018, and then it was in the family trust or what have you until I purchased it 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. For those 60 or 70 years, the fields were cropped. He was a dairy farmer, and they cropped it. I'm sure they did some sort of land management practices. I really don't know for sure, but the thing is, when I purchased it, the fields were weeds, and it was, it wasn't even soil, it was just dirt. So I'm doing what I can to naturally get it back into a good soil and good pasture land without more or less artificially doing it. I'm trying to help direct nature, if you will, rather than try and manipulate it. So having them out there, it was something that, while the fields aren't producing much in the form of hay or anything that I can directly put into the cattle are pretty much keeping up with the good grasses and just grazing. They were able to produce bugs and everything that the cattle didn't want, but there were tons of crickets out there and grasshoppers, and the chickens loved that. So they were able to produce something that I could then turn into a product for me. So it got the land producing more than it was, I guess, if you will. Going off of that, the other thing is the manure that the chickens produced. Everyone knows that chicken manure is excellent fertilizer. So having that going back onto the land, I believe that was a huge benefit as well. Now, they obviously don't produce as much as a steer would, but it's extra fertilizer, it's extra nutrients that's going into the soil. It's a different kind of fertilizer and nutrients, I guess. Different components and elements in there. Obviously, as chickens are omnivores, cattle are herbivores. The omnivore manure is going to be comprised of different components that can then go back into the soil. So there is that, and then also the fact that I'm trying to run things at I don't know how to say it, basically a net positive here, I guess, where I bring more onto the land than I take off, if that makes sense. So I brought all these chickens on at the end, which you heard in my last video. I ended up with 500 pounds, give or take, of meat that went into my freezer. And I brought in about 1,400 pounds of food. So I had 900 pounds of carryover that then went theoretically back into the soil. It was 900 pounds of stuff that I brought onto the farm that theoretically went back into the soil. Now, obviously, it's not a perfect one-to-one conversion, but just rough estimates. So this is just another thing in addition to the cattle that was, in a way, a cost-effective way to run a net positive mineral or manure or whatever back into the soil. You know, I could have just bought a bunch of manure and put it out there. But with the chickens, I got 900 pounds of conversion back into the soil for the price of buying the meat, basically. So at the end of the day, I'll eat all the chicken, I'm going to break even, plus I got 900 pounds more dirt, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the other idea behind it, is it's helping with that soil growth and everything, and that pasture management I'm trying to develop in a cost-effective way without just straight up being an expense. The last big thing that I thought they were a huge benefit was the ability to dump my garden scraps and everything else, kind of a garbage recycling area, if you will, for all the stuff out of the garden that might have gotten a little bit too ripe or what have you. that I didn't get to, some of the zucchinis that got too big. It gets you a little bit more out of the work you put in. You know, you raise the garden, you might as well try and use it, whether you're going to directly benefit from that vegetable or an animal is going to benefit, and then you're going to benefit from that animal. That's kind of my mindset, I guess. Whether or not that's right, beats me, but it makes sense in my head. So those were a couple of those non-monetary things that I had mentioned in my previous video about these that I wanted to touch base on, and maybe those would be the influence that would push you over the edge to go and get your own birds. If the money side was a little bit discouraging, it's something that everyone can benefit from, even just on that side. So thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoy any videos to come or any of the previous videos I've made. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.